Hello, everyone. I'm Stephen Robinson. I'm, as always, with Robin Panakia, and we're discussing the great, exciting, non-happening Democratic primary debates. I think I was inspired by this because Mike Pence, former vice president, has announced his presidential campaign, um, and I think that's amazing that
Candidacy.
the people who tried to kill you just a couple years ago, you
Hmm.
believe that you can win them over and they will make you the head of trying to kill you. Like that's a lot. Like you were trying to kill me, but please make me the head of trying to kill me. So he has never been actually polling very well. I was pulling up the real
What?
clear politics and so for and there's always the idea that there'll be a bounce when he announces what we all have known is that he plans
Mhm.
to run for president. But he has maxed out. There was a CNN poll recently. He was like at 6 percentage points. The real clear politics average for him is 3.8. Similar with Nikki Haley is 4.4. She's been running forever. Uh, Good old Tim Scott is at 1.6. Glenn Younging, who's not announced anything, but he's at 1 point. Uh, Chris Sununu, who might run, is at 1 point. Chris Christie, same. I believe he is about to announce at 1 point. And then
Didn't
bringing up,
for some reason I thought he already did, but maybe he didn't.
I think it's always difficult because there's like I filed paperwork or I'm
Mhm.
considering and then I've officially started. So you
Yeah.
say like, okay,
There's so many steps.
there's steps for campaign finance purposes. So he is at 1%, Larry Elder at half a point, and Asa Hutchinson 0.4. Trump leading everyone considerably by 30 points or more.
Mhm.
His average is about 53. So that is in comparison, which I found fascinating, was on the Democratic primary, which is a primary because
Mhm.
even if the DNC ignores these candidates, they have filed the paperwork. They are, in fact, running. I think they will appear on ballots. Like there is an actual primary occurring. Um, Robert Kennedy Jr. is
My personal fave.
yeah, not a fan of him. He is at 16.8 as an average, sort of very close to what DeSantis is running, and DeSantis is considered, for many Republicans, the great
Mhm.
hope, the non-Trump hope. And Marianne Williamson, I again am not a fan, but she's averaging about 6.8%, which is more than pretty much every non-DeSantis Republican, including the former vice president of the
Mhm.
United States. And the position is, of course, that the Democratic National Convention is not going to acknowledge or it's like they're not real candidates, and I get that. I've defended them in the past, the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, in the sense of they have no their goal is to support the incumbent or whoever they believe is the candidate most likely to win and prevail. They have no interest in helping these other candidates um, win. Similar to in 2016, it's not in their interest to support any other random candidates other
Yeah.
than whoever they. That's just how the business works. You've had a different possession of this. You believe obviously this anti-democratic, and it actually is perhaps counter to their ends. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Well, okay. So here's my thing. I think it's making it difficult. I think, Robert Kennedy is an absolute nut and probably one of the few people that would make Joe Biden look really good in a debate. But sorry. But it's true. Um it's more that I have a worry that I think a lot of Democratic voters have an instinct towards fairness, even when like it's not conducive to the result that people want to get. Like it's sort of like fairness first before anything else. It's like, I hate these people, they suck, but we don't want to, but like we don't want a situation where people are like, well, you're being unfair to those people and they have a point. And that's really always like, where I find it stressful, and I find it, a very difficult thing to approach. I understand that, generally speaking, we don't have debates when it is an incumbent, but I also think that we are very much on a trajectory towards democratizing the process more. We've only had, in retrospect, a pretty small amount of elections wherein we actually do have the full primary, and where it's like the person who wins the primary is the person who wins the presidency. Even with Obama and Clinton, neither of them got enough delegates to qualify, and so the super delegates are, they put Obama over. It really only started with people being super pissed off about the 1968 election, because they didn't want a pro-Vietnam War candidate, and that did not go over so well with people. And it's really only, we don't have, it's like we don't have enough history to say what is and is not tradition, I think, at this point. And I think that, we really, in light of other things that have occurred that I believe have very much hurt the Democratic Party, I worry that if we don't err towards fairness, that we're going to get caught on that worse than anything else that anyone could throw at us.
Having worked in corporate America for a long time, I use the term like optics and perception is reality, and they can sound like weird terms, but I think it does apply in the sense of, I would have this debate with folks and I would say, I get it. I understand how the primary rules work. I understand that in 2016, why it was very unlikely that Sanders is going to win after a certain point. The problem is, optically, you're voters. And they're not idiots. They're not people who need to take civics lessons. And again, if you ever quote, you need to take a civics class to someone, you're a jerk and no one likes you. But there was, would be like,
I tested out of that shit. So
it would be like someone, look, a Democratic voter or someone inclined to vote for Democrats in, say, Oregon or some part of the country would be like, wait a minute, so it's Super Tuesday and like 12 states have voted and it's over? Like, I don't understand why. How can it be over? And that's a legitimate, and what I need to do is convince, to your point about because that's a question of fairness. I need to address that. Repeating the rules to them is not that doesn't address, like, if you think something's unfair, my repeating the rules to you, how does that
if the rules don't seem fair?
Like, well, that's the rules. It's like it's over by
very much designed to not be fair. Like, let's be real. Like, if we wanted to be fair, we'd have the primaries all on the same day. There's really no fucking reason to not have all the primaries on the same day and to drag things out this way. We end up with a situation where, not everyone ends up getting to have a say, and that's absolutely ridiculous. Like, we already don't have, I think, like, especially like if you live in a non-swing state, it's like your voice doesn't count very much to begin with because, I'm in Illinois. It's going to go to whoever the Democratic candidate is, no matter what. Same thing when I was in New York. Same thing for you. Probably, I don't know, who you get some weirdos in your state. So,
I disagree with that. Down ballot matters, turnout matters, but yes, it is the perception that your vote doesn't matter actually makes participation worse, even though you should come out. Like in New York, the House was decided because of New York, and if you perceive the idea that your vote doesn't matter, or that it's a Democratic state and we're going to get wiped out elsewhere, then it's going to turn around and be like, oh, wait a minute, we lost the House because of 4 or 5 races we might have won in New York. I think 2016 was arguably a bigger issue because of Trump, because
Yeah.
normally, and I would say if this had been Jeb or Rob, any other typical Republican who
Mhm.
had ran the tables by Super Tuesday, then everyone says, okay, that guy won because I still want a career in the party, right? So
Yeah.
that guy won according to the unofficial rules. I'll
Yeah.
come back. He won. He's a presumptive nominee. That term for someone who has not actually won anything is
Yeah.
presumptive. But that didn't happen because Republicans were at that point desperate for Trump, and the media as well, desperate for him not to win. So then they
Mhm.
were saying, oh, well, here's how Cruz, and that's how bad things are
Yeah.
when Cruz is your other chance. Here's how Cruz and Kasich could possibly still win and take it to the convention.
Yeah.
And then they were like, I'm sure, I don't know if you were one of, I know you're a Sanders supporter, but I don't know if you were thinking that way. It was like, okay, well, why can't we do that? No, 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 no. You've got to, Hillary has performed up to
Well,
Super
it's this
Tuesday's
whole
way. Now
idea
go
that
on and end. And it's
yeah.
not consistent with what was happening. They were saying, well, there is a chance if we actually don't like the guy who's ahead, but if we like the person who's ahead,
Mhm.
then we can call the race off. And I think that became very confusing to people at the time.
Well, I think part of what it was that it was like the idea that even before then he should just go away and just let her have the nomination because even challenging her at all hurt her campaign, which I don't think that it I think that it maybe it did eventually, but I don't think it should have. I think that if perhaps it had been entered with the spirit of fairness and decency, that it would not have gone that way. The only, like, if you look at the early debates, Sanders didn't want to criticize her at all. He in fact stood up for her when they were talking about her emails, and the only time he ended up fighting back was when it started to become very, very ridiculous how unfair the process was, and people were getting mad about that. And so when you got to those primaries and everything, and people were like, oh, he needs to back off now, he needs to back off now, that actually just discouraged voters. It didn't do anything to make people go like, yeah, I'm ready to get behind Hillary Clinton now. It just sort of made people feel like, fuck you, you're not important. Like, that's really, like, very much how people read it. And yeah, people do see things that way. And I think it's something that a lot of, you know, serious people don't like to contend with. And they don't like to think about, the fact that people do, like, especially the voters on the fringes. Fringes isn't like a good term, I think, for this, because it's not like we're like, but the people like more on the edges of the Democratic Party, the people who are less like, yay establishment, yay rules. Like, rules are good for the sake of rules because that's how, like, things should be the way they have always been about everything. Um, I don't. I think that it very much runs the risks of alienating them, and possibly anyone who isn't a committed Democratic voter.
Yeah, I mean, I was fairly agnostic during 2016 in the sense of I was not a Bernie. I'm accused of often being a Bernie bro for the very fact that I will not think that he is responsible for electing Trump. I think that became some sort of kind
Well, I
of
think unless you agree that he is in fact Satan, that
yeah, like I'm not. That's always been a problem with me because I'm kind of like I'm not on a bandwagon in any case. So
yeah,
it'll be like I'm not supportive enough of him, so I'm a
yeah,
sellout. Then there's some folks who it's like, well, why do you even say how he is the worst person ever? And it's like, well, I don't necessarily agree with that. And I don't think that obviously, I mean, I think there were a couple of things 2016, there was a significant anti-Clinton vote, which people would even mention, Clinton supporters would ironically mention in 2020 when he said that he was not going to do as well. Because like, well, a lot of that vote was anti-Clinton. And I was like, well, that's a problem if you have that degree of people who aren't behind a particular candidate. And then there was a sense of there is a clear core perhaps philosophical or ideological difference within the party, that was worth a discussion.
Mhm.
Even if it's not
Well, I
50
think
fifty.
the
Let's
idea
say
was
it's
that, like,
80-20. There should be a debate about it, but there was no sense of even having the debate. So the
mhm.
idea is, um, and I think Clinton in her postmortem framed it as kind of Sanders perhaps deliberately undercutting her. So she would say what's realistic about the minimum wage, and then Sanders would undercut her for votes, knowing that that's unrealistic. And I don't know if that's an entirely fair thing to state. I don't think his policies were intended to undercut her. He's clearly just to the left of her. It seems to be sort of
Yeah.
an implicit admission that what he was promising was fairly popular. And she was saying, well, here's how it can, well, just fine, but have that again. I think going back to the larger theme here,
Mhm.
have that debate, have that discussion. And it's going to be fractious. I get that. And I think it's even more the point. I think the irony here is that what happens is because of Trump in 2016, the idea was that there never should have been a debate. Everyone should have rallied behind Clinton
Mhm.
very early on, or you wound up with the fascists. And then now it's like, if there's any debate, if
Yeah.
there's ever challenge, you've got to rally behind the Democrat, vote blue, no matter who, or you're going to get the fascists. Well, if that's the case, then there literally is there's no debate. Like
Yeah.
you and I don't agree on everything, but we agree on no fascists, right?
Yeah.
Like this. So if it's just like, essentially it's like, call me on election day, right?
Yeah.
Because like, why? Okay, I'm going to vote against whoever it is. I could find a heroic hippo, and I will vote against that hippo over DeSantis or Trump.
Yeah.
So like, why? But to me, that's like, this is the only time there's going to be a debate. It's the only time there would actually be a discussion in the sense of debate, because
Mhm.
I'm not a big fan of them once you get involved with Republicans, because they're just going to lie and insult you and expose you to COVID, as Trump did in 2020.
Yeah.
So like, that's pointless. So now here's the only time. And I think if the RNC is actually going to have a debate where Trump gets to beat up on DeSantis, because I think he'll crush him, and
Yeah.
everyone there, and the incumbent president isn't,
Mhm.
that's not necessarily a great thing. I just think, I don't know. I get the idea. I think people are arguing in different circles from what I've seen online. They do something that's kind of frustrating, which is sort of, well, Ford was primaried by Reagan and
Mhm.
lost, and Carter was primaried by Kennedy and lost. And if they hadn't been primaried, they would have won. So many logical fallacies there. The other being, the primaries are arguably because those candidates might have been weak.
Yeah.
So of
Which
preventing,
is, like, possibly why they are primaried in the first place.
yeah, so preventing that. And also, there is a primary. These guys are actually running. They filed the paperwork.
Yeah.
He's not running uncontested. He has been primary. Like, I think Trump ran uncontested in 2020. Maybe some random person ran, but it wasn't like anything close to this. And so I don't know. I think there's there's some sense of, if you want the entire party to come out, and they
Mhm.
should come out. I'm not saying they shouldn't. There should at least explain the past 4 years to your voters. It's not a terrible thing, and especially to the sane voters, because
Yeah.
that's going to be the only time that conversation is going to be had. Because when you get to Trump, then it's, or DeSantis, is just going to be like, okay, well, here's why I think we should, shoot every transgender person to the moon, and he's going to be like, no, and that's not a debate. Like, that's,
Yeah.
like, that is
And I
fascism.
think it's definitely,
Humanity.
the only thing that I would say is that it's possible that, like, with two kind of kooky people, it would almost look kind of like both gracious and strong of Biden to be like, you know what, sure, let's have a debate. Let's do this. Like, I do kind of think that would be
Oh yeah,
sort of cool.
that's my point.
Like,
It's the only
say,
time he's going to have a
and
reasonable
then, like, he
discussion.
would then have a chance to, you know, promote what he's done, and in a way that, like, people would actually, sort of be very invested in, I think. Because sometimes it's hard to just, like, listen to one person talking for a long time. It really is. Like, town halls are fine, but, like, you know, um,
No, yeah, I think it's the only time that he will actually be able to talk about his record in a reasonable sense without being yelled at
Yeah.
or insulted. I mean, whatever the issues, I think both of those guys are kooks, Kennedy and Williamson.
Yeah.
But I mean, Williamson from the debates was not Trump. And frankly, she wasn't Nikki Haley. She's not someone who's going to actually lie in
Yeah.
debates. Like she's not going, I mean, she's going to be off her in some realm of reality, but it's not lying in the sense of I'm going to try to talk to you in a straight face as if the world didn't happen, and I'm going to just smear your
Yeah.
record or whatever and say Kamala Harris is, all this sort of terrible stuff. That's what's going to happen in a Republican
Mhm.
debate. This is the only time, as you said, that there's actually going to be a chance to really discuss the record amongst
Yeah.
amongst
Yeah, amongst
Democrats.
Democrats, and have it like be a thing that gets people enthusiastic and look at it that way rather than, oh no, if we it looks, I feel like it looks insecure or something if people are like, oh no, we mustn't, do anything that'll, make him look weak. But I actually think it doesn't look weak to do that. Like for me, I'm like, come at me. I will I'm scared of no one. And I think that does, for me, that projects strength and it projects magnanimity rather than, we're keeping people out, even if, they suck. Obviously, these are people. I mean, I don't think that Marianne Williamson is necessarily a bad person in the same way that I think, Ron DeSantis is a bad person. I think she's obviously a little kooky. I don't like her, weird Jesus self-help shit, which she is more into than the crystals. I will. She's not. She's very clear that she is not into
Mhm.
crystals, actually. But and I clearly dislike Robert F. Kennedy, who I actually do think is at this point has veered into official bad person territory. Like I don't think that he really has any redeeming qualities at this point.
Also,
Um,
yeah, and also, don't you run the risk of essentially having Trump I mean, the debates aren't going to be real debates. As I say, I go
yeah.
back. The general election debates won't be real. Trump will just yell and scream or whatever. But he's still essentially been in training
Mhm.
for about a year, and Biden will not have debated anyone
Yeah,
until
exactly, and
meeting
that makes me nervous.
um at least as a Marianne
Yeah,
Wilson's not going to talk about his mama, but like it's a reasonable, okay, it'll be a discussion. He can kind of
and
mix
it
it up.
keeps him in the news. I mean, honestly, I've said this a bajillion times, but I really do think that, the thing that DNC did in order to, they tried to sort of hide the debates between Clinton and Sanders, thinking that, okay, well, we'll just make sure that Sanders doesn't get any exposure and people just think that Clinton is the only one running. And, that was sort of their tactic. I maintain forever that that hurt Clinton because, she was actually very good in debates. That
Mhm.
was where she was, quite frankly, excellent. That was her strength always. And so to sort of hide the debates in hopes that no one would see Bernie Sanders, I think absolutely hurt her and killed her momentum
Yeah.
because people would have, liked to see her do well.
Well, look, I mean, I was more inclined to agree with Clinton on certain things, but
Mhm.
you and I, to pretend that you don't exist. So it's like let's just shave this. It's all me, and then but you need to come in at the end and vote for me. But
Yeah.
you haven't been heard, and I think that's a problem. There's a sense of, and we've seen it a lot. I mean, it's a weird thing I get of. I see it in our own comments sometimes. I see it online of just virulent contempt for progressives and
Mhm.
people who think as you do. It's a lot of ad hominem, a lot of ridiculous blame, like you're sort of Schrodinger's progressive. So you are simultaneously, so someone was arguing that we lost the House and we lost in Virginia because people like you stayed home and twiddled your thumbs and didn't care
Mhm.
about Black people and didn't vote, which is not like if you look at the exit poll, no, that's not the
It's
case.
not
It was
factually true.
it was white moderate Biden voters who were like, oh no, crime,
Mhm.
and oh no, school parents' rights in schools in Virginia, and they flipped, and that was more of the issue. And but then it's like, oh, but they only did that because Robin said like defund the police or something. And
Yeah.
so it's like somehow it's no matter, and that to me is like it's like a bad relationship,
Well, I
right?
think it's
At a
just like
certain point, it's like if you can do nothing, all right, this person can do nothing right. They're
it's
responsible
the
for
cheating
everything wrong.
practice.
Yeah, it's like okay, well, there's no having a debate here. Like I'll have the debate if like okay, you or I legitimately fucked up,
Mhm.
and there's the point, okay, but it's like oh right, however you interpret this data. It is that it's Robin's fault is like not okay. I all right. Like I don't know
Mhm.
how to engage because it's always completely in bad faith. It's sort of, well, there's actual data as to what happened in Virginia and New York,
Well, I
and
think that
it's the
there are
modern.
people who are like, this is the better story, and it, because they don't want to. This here's the thing: they don't. They can say like, oh, they're bad, spoiled brats. They can't to us, and we'll still be like, well, I guess our lives are kind of on the line, so we have to vote for you anyway. But they don't want to go after those more moderate voters and say like, hey, you guys fucked up, because they know if they say, hey, you guys fucked up to them, the Republicans are going to start looking really good. So we're a better scapegoat.
Yeah, I guess the
Also,
idea
there's
is
like a
that you'll
continue.
never go away.
Yeah,
You'll always come back. I can beat up on you because where else are you going to go? But the moderates, I need to always be
yeah,
appealing to those moderates because they can, so as they can legitimately change. So it's the idea of like
yeah.
if but again, if people voters like yourself were responsible for 2016, the idea should be everything since then should be about appealing to you, but then it's not. But it's like if the moderates are like, oh, crime, I'm going to still vote. I'm going to vote for a literal fascist who will institute a police state because I'm
Mhm.
afraid that people are going to not give money to cops. It's not even a valid opinion because everyone's going to give money to cops. We know that. And so, oh, I saw a homeless person. Okay, well, we'll do whatever we can to appeal to you. And so that becomes this sort of Schrodinger's progressive of like you're a constant scapegoat, and that's not ideal. But I mean, in a larger sense, though, these voters exist. I saw like one guy online talking about get lost progressives, we don't need you. And then later it's like you guys don't care enough about democracy. It's like I don't understand. Do you not get how politics work? Like yelling at people and telling them they suck is not going to get you to vote for them. And like and
I
then
mean,
coming and
don't
saying
argue
it's
to
your
me that
fault.
that is in fact exactly how you get people to vote, because they need us to know how very wrong we are. So,
Well, yeah, so sort
um,
of like whatever percentage to me it's like beating up on the percentage of people who are voting for Williamson or Kennedy
I mean, I
to
don't think
beat up
any of
on
those
them,
people are really progressives, but
whoever
that's
they
not
who,
really
yeah,
our deal. Like that's
they
that's
are
like the book
registered
club,
Democrats.
and
It's like figuring out who those people are and figuring out why they are unhappy
Mhm.
with Biden and making the appeal to them. I think that's a very good.
I will say for RFK, I think there is very much a significant amount of people who don't really know what his deal is at all, and are just thinking, "Oh boy, a Kennedy."
Well,
Like, and
wouldn't the debate expose that
exactly, that's like
because
people should
otherwise going to
let
be
people
like,
know
oh
who he
yeah,
is.
Kennedy. Well, they're writing on name recognition, say with Williamson,
Yeah.
but I mean Williamson um is polling pretty well for some like she was in the last primary. Like some of these people who have run before in Republicans
Mhm.
primary, like Christie ran before, and he's
Yeah.
coming back at 1%.
Okay, so I think part of it with what I will say is I think there are a lot of people who are like, I'm just going to say that I'm voting for someone who's not Biden so that Biden tries harder to
Mhm.
appeal to different factions. Because there are people that do that. And
Yeah.
I don't necessarily, I wouldn't necessarily dismiss it as a tactic, I guess. I don't think that there are genuinely 6% of people who are like, I'm definitely voting for Marianne Williamson, unless they're just like chaos agents.
I mean, you can dig down into the polling, the people who would say why they're voting for specific people or whatever, and who knows if it is an if it is sort of an anti-Biden vote more than
Mhm.
anything else, then that's still something he probably should address. Especially because turnout is the issue, right? So there's any
Mhm.
shoring of that, like build that up. Um, because I mean, with Trump, he's gonna run based on a dominance campaign, so he's just going to humiliate these people, and that will
Yeah.
just help him. Um, yeah, I mean, it is sort of weird to, um, well, I mean, he's essentially he's running. We get it. He's running again. I get that. I get that. It's. I mean, I would vote for him again. I obviously would vote for him again in the primary. I will vote for him again in the primary against Kennedy and Williamson. I get that. I just think this is weird when people say that's like the larger democratic question for me. So when they say that, like, we should just like the incumbent is there for 8 years and
Yeah.
there's nothing ever changes or nothing. There's no account for that. It's happened with Feinstein as well, where they she was elected 4 years
Mhm.
ago. And so you can't question anything, even though there's a clear physical and mental decline. You can't question she was elected then. Well, what if there was, but it seems that there was issues with like what
Mhm.
was told about her health even then doesn't matter. So here it's like, okay, well, Biden's a guy for 8 years. It's like, well, no, technically they are
Mhm.
reelected. It's not ceremonial,
Yeah.
right? It's like, no. He says I'm gonna run again, and that means running again, not just in the general, but also in the
Primary.
primary. And I think there's this idea that no, any sort of real primary election, and this is all going to be blown up with
Mhm.
there's an idea that Joe Manchin might run as a third
Oh, that's
party
adorable. Yeah.
on the no
No
labels
labels. Yeah.
with maybe even Kirsten Sinema, which would make perfect sense
Unfortunately, they're
given
generic. So
they yes.
the
Well,
generic
no,
white people ballot basically is
well,
what.
that's what no label, like that's just what you're poor, right? And you buy the no label, like the
Yeah, that's
economy brand. It's like not the best average, and they do have label, like they like I don't know. I just sort of I get that. I get the idea appeal of like I don't belong to a club. I'm my own person, but in a
mhm,
it just the risk of that, especially when you're let's say over the age of 16, is that it becomes like you are saying I'm all about me and I don't want to be part of anything else. It's all about me. It's self-serving. So it's not like individualism. It's individualism to a point of my own agenda matters to anyone else. I'm not part of any sort of larger group or calling. And I think that also leads to a lot of the cult of personalities we see. So we don't sort of see sort of a collective people working together. We either see just sort of
mhm.
these individual assholes like Cinema, or like a clear, cult like
Yeah.
with Trump. Um, but no, I mean, I get it. Everyone will say that I don't know how politics work, and I want Trump to win again. And I'm just raising the fact that having a debate would not be the worst thing in the world. I know they have not had them
Nothing ever
before.
has to be the worst thing in the world, depending on how you handle it. And there is a way for it to go well. There's a way for it to go terribly. There's a way for refusing to do it to go well, I guess. And there's a way for that to go really badly.
Well, yeah, well, not even just the presidency. I would say all the way down the ballot,
Mhm.
Democrats need to stop saying, "How dare you primary this incumbent,"
Yeah.
when you're also saying, "Vote blue, no matter who,"
Mhm.
because Republicans are fascists. So to me, it's like whatever the old rules were, and we are fair to have disagreed about what those rules were 20 years ago or
Mhm.
30 years ago. But if I was inclined to say, like in the 90s, yeah, like, okay, don't, it's an unnecessary waste of time, money to primary someone who's doing a good job and it's fine. And they've got all the experience in the district or whatever, fine. Okay. But if now we're saying it's no longer a choice because ultimately it's going to be between whoever the Democrat is and someone who wants to like light black people on fire is not a compelling choice. Like, okay, well, that's not a
Mhm.
choice. So we should have primaries, but they make it this weird sort of circular logic of like, well, now it's even more so because they're fascists that we don't have choices. And I think that's dangerous. It's sort of
Yeah.
like no primaries, no challenging, don't criticize, don't even make jokes about Democrats. Because if you make a joke about a Democrat, you're helping Republicans.
Like
I've gotten that as well. And I'm like, I mean, we're I write funny stuff. I try
Yeah.
to. I'm sorry, I can't.
And also what
Um,
people don't get is that, like, if you always seem like you're 100% in the bag for anyone, like all of the time, no matter what, no one's going to trust what you have to say. Like or at least I don't. Like when I feel like someone's just like, I'm doing talking points, that's boring and I don't care to read it. I absolutely, no, I mean, like I will absolutely give credit to people that I hate when, or dislike when they do something I think is good. I feel like I'm fair in that way. If, I will absolutely give credit where it's due, because I'm not, again, you know, you were saying before, but I'm very much not a team player in a lot of ways. It's,
mhm,
I sort of skeeve that. And so, and it's more of like an innate thing. Like I just naturally sort of hate a bandwagon of any kind. And I think that a lot of other people do as well. And a lot of people don't necessarily, like, it's just like part of what skeeves me personally about a lot of the Trump supporters thing is that they're just like, no matter what he says, we agree with it. He will, no matter, like, and that is creepy as hell. And I don't ever want to be the left wing version of that.
um, yeah, I saw that a lot with, like, if again, I mentioned this when someone I think had made fun of Kamala Harris, like standard sort of making fun of the
Mhm.
BP, because
Yeah.
that's what vice presidents are here there
Yeah.
for, helping comedians
Yeah.
for generations now. And just she was just attacked by the people with THEE in their Twitter handles, and like, how dare, right wing talking points, like she's a comedian, or she writes for
Yeah.
a talk, and that's what she should do. Like, that's just absurd to me. um Speaking of silly people, I so someone said it's like a weird thing where suddenly it's now Target, especially Disney World, and now Chick-fil-A,
Chick-fil-A is too woke. They don't
that's
want any
too woke.
no woke chicken. They want the Lord's chicken only. Um,
um
um, I
God God loves
I would have
chicken.
thought it was a parody. There's this video going around. I'm sure you've seen it at some point, of this girl going like, she's just very upset. Her name is what, Morgana with two N's or something. Morgan with it's like something nutty, and she's just very upset because Chick-fil-A has a diversity, equity, inclusion officer, like literally every other company on earth. Like my dad was a chief diversity officer years ago, like because it was the 90s and white guys were at that point the chief diversity officers. Hi dad, sorry. But um like they were very upset about that, and they were like, so now we're going to take our business to Raising Cane's, which also I'm pretty sure has a DEI um officer, and has been on the record for way longer as like having been, pro LGBTQ and everything, and just generally not shitty. Like there's nothing about them that seems shitty. They even did a, in my view, very important. No, they just did sponsorship type, whatever, social media thing with Ariana Madix from Vanderpump Rules, and you know, it's very personally important to me that companies are on the side of Ariana and not Rachel.
Yeah.
These are very important. This is a very
um
important issue. No.
so they sort of went down the list of backup chicken places, like
Yeah.
if they were stoned, or how, and they were driving around and whichever place was closed, it's like, what's the next place? And they would do that, as opposed to actually seeing if they
Mhm.
agree with their evil aims.
Yeah.
Well, part of it is like a lot of what DeSantis and people like Matt Walsh and others are doing. They're getting upset about stuff that arguably isn't that new and has
No.
been mainstream for a while. So when that happens, then it's just like, yes, Chick-fil-A has a diverse equity inclusion, because that was not a controversial thing. It is actually outside of the mainstream that DeSantis,
Yeah.
like, that's because he's a racist, and that is part of the problem. Um, it's interesting. Trump took a swing at DeSantis, sort of like saying like woke doesn't mean anything, and like people keep saying it doesn't mean, and I get that point because DeSantis often sounds so
We'll destroy each other.
well, he sounds way too online, like he uses like CRT, D, like all this sort of stuff. Whereas Trump has always the sense of his appeal has been very kind of, so it's like if he doesn't like something, he's going to call it sick or degenerate or whatever, blah blah blah. I think others will just think like, what is DeSantis talking about? DeSantis is sort of the belief that he could actually win, and I'm never going to say. And again, people will challenge. It's like, oh well, people thought that Trump couldn't win. It's like, well, no, he had huge name recognition, had a certain degree of charisma, evil charisma, but charisma.
Yeah.
If you went to one of those his rallies and you were inclined, it was a party. He's entertaining. He's doing this sort of stuff. Like that is not DeSantis. He is very
DeSantis
awkward.
is truly, and I hate that we have to claim him, the least charismatic Italian person on earth. And like, I mean, as a people, we're kind of sexy.
Well, I mean, wasn't that a big thing in Goodfellas? I felt as a teenager watching that was like I wanted to hang out with these guys. Like that's the cognitive dissonance, because they're all I understood intellectually. No, everything they're doing is wrong. This is bad, but they are having a good time.
Fun.
They're having a good time. They're breaking, busting their balls. I remember the first time I heard that before I even saw the film was from a woman who was like who you not imagine saying that expression.
Everyone says busting your balls.
First time I heard it, I grew up in the Bible Belt. So the first time I heard it, was like it was
How
college.
old were you?
I was probably in college, shortly after the film came out.
No.
First time I heard the expression.
I think I said that when I was like 5. Or, yes. Or we'd say like busting your agates, which I don't actually know what that means, really. I think it's Scottish. I assume agates are Scottish for balls. I've never actually looked this up, or I guess I should probably look that up. But
yeah, it's sort of Trump would seem like the head of a group of creepy frat boys. Like if you roll back, his son isn't. His son is the guy trying to get the favor of the head frat boy jerk, which is Trump. But DeSantis isn't. DeSantis to me never, I can't imagine any sort of social arrangement where he was like the guy people look up to or whatever, or say, I want to hang with this guy. What are we going to do next? Like he's just,
no, he has Cruz-like charisma, which is like literally zero. What I would actually say is they both have extremely online personalities, except that Trump is more 4chan shit poster. DeSantis, regardless of anything else, is very much more the bitter incel website person. Like that's where he's just like, yeah, everyone's a degenerate and they're all gonna, start. He's gonna start. I wouldn't be surprised if he started talking about the dog pill or like other terrifying incel theories, which is, one of the popular theories amongst incels is that they aren't getting laid because women are sleeping with dogs instead of them. Like that they actually believe that.
I wouldn't admit that. I would just okay.
They're like, who's more appealing than us Labradors? Like like
oh,
yeah, no, God. I have way too much self-confidence for that. I'm like, I am, clearly prettier than I think most dogs. Maybe not poodles. Poodles are like really pretty, but
have you seen Magnolia, the movie?
Not in like a bajillion years.
But you're aware of the Tom Cruise character, whatever, who sort of kind of, I guess, proto incel. Maybe they were incels at that point, but. Yeah, DeSantis seems like the guy in that audience. He is not Tom Cruise on the stage. So to me, he just never, he is nowhere near the charisma to
he's creepy.
He's part of it. And again, to speak in film and media and TV terms, but he is the jerk. He is the jerk character, but he's not the one in charge of the jerks. He's always sort of, and so no, he's, generally speaking, the more likable person wins.
He comes across very much as like, okay, so there's like righteous anger and then there's fucking creepy anger. And I'm not saying, I feel like, and I'm not saying like the person who is angry in a righteous way is actually in fact righteous, but like there's like a way to present that anger. And then like DeSantis is creepy, bitter anger. Like, oh no, all these people are out to get us. And, other people do that too, but not to the same extent where it becomes uncomfortable. Like I feel like he very much, even like with his own people, he like is going to get to the point where he crosses a line where people are like, you're just really not fun at all. Because I will say, for whatever reason, people found Trump to be fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's like a, sort of shallow reading of things, but DeSantis is extremely not fun. Like no one's like, oh man, that guy seems like a real party. Even if they do agree with him, like he's skivotes. Like, like I don't.
Well, obviously Trump was racist in the way he was going. I'm not diminishing the racism of his first campaign and what he was hitting, but in a general, you couldn't help during some of it. It felt as if it was someone punching to extent beating, even if it's lateral punching or if not quite punching up, of Jeb Bush, a Bush son, someone saying that George W. Bush actually fucked up and didn't keep us safe. Like no one else would say anything when he said that on the stage. And Trump came out like, what are you talking about? He didn't keep us safe. Like to do that type of stuff, to go after Cruz again, but who was a weasel. No one liked him. We liked seeing him humiliate Cruz, Rubio. So there was a sense of that. But with DeSantis, it's like his enemies are, the personification of his enemies are like, who is on that level of Bush or George W. Bush or Cruz. It's more like he's going after, his enemies are like school teachers, trans kids or whatever. Like you can really humanize, and we should have humanized obviously Mexicans crossing the border, but really the way that DeSantis going, it's like people these are just kids. Like
it's like, who are the people in your neighborhood, and why does Ron DeSantis think that they're all pedophiles?
Yes, like, you're more likely to know a lot of what Trump. And again, it's like, people would say, I mean, look, that was always the issue because Obama's very powerful, right? Like Obama's very powerful and fortunate, and no matter how racially coded it is, and I get it, and it's racist, but he's got a great wife, great kids. The level, there's an envy there, so you're gonna like someone who's calling him out or whatever. Fine, if you happen to not like him. Whereas DeSantis is like, what he's doing again, or you're saying it's more likely that someone that he is crapping on. I said, who in your neighborhood? You're more likely to know.
No catharsis there, I think. Like part of what Trump brought to those terrible people was he gave them the catharsis they were looking for. He was going to own the libs. He was going to stop all of their relatives and coworkers and friends from high school from telling them that they were racists on the internet.
Oh yeah.
He was gonna, and to them that was like, he's speaking truth to power and blah blah blah, because
there was
because they're very fucked up in the head. It's like,
well, there's my middle management theory with that as well. I think a lot of in companies or organizations, some middle management is often, let's say, they'll look more like us, and the big people making all the choices and making the decisions are white people.
In the middle are always the most evil, is what
but we are
the manager
often, exactly. And so you're gonna get often, I think Trump was, despite being the guy golfing with the person who says lay off all these people, they still saw him as someone who was like, oh yeah, this black guy who's telling you what to do, or this woman who's like Hillary Clinton, who's coming in and making these weird changes to your office environment. They don't know what they're doing, and I'll fix everything. And I think that was that sort of catharsis for them of like, oh yeah, my boss used to be someone like me.
Yeah.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, and now isn't. And a lot of the stuff that's racist is sort of not, I do think there's a sense of someone saying my boss used to be like me, or I understood my boss. And there's obviously racism and
Yeah.
misogyny to that, but at the same time, it is a sense of I used to understand the world and now I don't. Please explain the world to me. And so if someone comes in and says, the way the world has changed is not your fault, and I can change it back to you, it's going to be more appealing than someone saying, you're a fucking racist and an idiot and a sexist, and here's all these things that you are. Now please vote for me. Like that's not. So there has to be the evil, evil versus
I do feel like
arrogant
Democrats
is
very
never
much
going to
have
work.
overplayed the, well, if you're a good person, you'll vote for us card. And like, yes, factually, sure, that's fine. People don't like to hear that though. Like, it's a bad thing to say to people.
Well, I think that's why you
It's not
have
a compelling argument.
that's why you have elections. Like people are always shocked about like,
Yeah.
why do we even have to explain? Because that's why we have elections and democracies. Like
Yeah.
it would just sort of be a given that like, oh, well, this one's evil,
Yeah.
good, and everyone will vote for the good candidate. But that's not how it is. You've got to explain it, and you've got to like recognize that people's issues
Yeah.
are real and connect to them in ways that don't make them feel like you're, sneering at them.
And
And
that's, I think where Obama was really good. That's where Bill Clinton was really good. I think that Joe Biden does have the ability to do that. And when he does it, he's really good.
yeah,
I actually do think that Hillary Clinton had the ability to do that sometimes. I think that she repressed it because she thought that she wasn't supposed to. I don't
mhm.
know.
Yeah, I mean, the never Trumpers are, of course, love to compare DeSantis to Hillary Clinton.
Mhm.
Obviously, her supporters think that's unfair. That she was essentially better with that. She was more than just a resume. She was actually better
Mhm.
with voters than DeSantis, and of course, what she represented it as a woman in her position. Obviously, me like DeSantis is one of a long line of white male assholes, so it doesn't help that he has a top. Like, okay, like you don't represent anything. Like, why would anyone rally behind you? So we shall see. I think it's going to be a bunch of candidates beating up on each other and not taking any hits on Trump, which is probably not how you stop Trump, but I don't know. We will at least we'll have debates to
Yeah.
see. I think before we wrap things up, the RNC released the criteria to qualify for presidential primary debates. Very generous, sort of a minimum of 40,000 unique donors to your campaign, which is like not a lot.
Yeah.
And you have to sign a pledge agreeing not to participate in any non-RNC sanctioned debate for the remainder of the election cycle. Sign a pledge agreeing to support the eventual party nominee, which is what screwed them the last time,
Mhm.
because that's still going to be Trump. And yeah, like it needs to poll in at least 1% in 3 national polls or 1% in 2 national polls, which just means that
Mhm.
you've declared your candidacy and like released a commercial. Because I feel like if you can't get to 1% under those terms, so that's like pretty much
Yeah.
anyone come to this club. We will accept anyone. There is no, obviously if you tried to overthrow the government or currently been indicted or has been held liable for
Yeah. Or
sexual
sexual assault. Yeah.
assault, that you probably can't participate in our debates. None of that. So Trump is in the clear. So it'll be a very wide debate. And meanwhile, we will probably not have one on the Democratic side.
Yeah.
And I get it. I just want to clarify. I do want Biden to win again. I am not repeating Russian
Yeah.
talking points. That is one of the new favorite ones, that we are repeating Russian talking points. If you I guess if you say anything people don't like these days.
All happy families are alike. Sorry.
Yes, exactly. That'd be a fun, like you should just start. That's the SNL
Sorry,
sketch.
I'm an asshole. Sorry.
That's actually a great SNL sketch, like the Russian, like it's just you and it's all just Russian literature. It's like, oh, I guess she's just regurgitating Russian talking points.
I'm gonna. Yeah. Let's bring on the Inquisitor, the Grand Inquisitor. Sorry.
Putin's very upset. It's like, well, who prepped her? These are the wrong Russian talking points. Like but we've produced so much. It's not just the bad stuff. There's so much great literature and art that we could also
I am the real Anastasia.
Yeah, we could also promote on the air. All right. So when you are watching, for those watching, because we pre-recorded this because there's you will be celebrating a birthday tomorrow on Monday.
Yes, tomorrow, technically tomorrow, and I will not be working. I'll be hanging out with my sister who's coming to visit me, and you celebrated a birthday yesterday, which is technically now 3 days ago.
Yes, so it's a big day. June is
a really exciting month.
All over.
Yeah. I don't believe in horoscopes, but we're both Geminis. That means literally nothing.
Except people, I think one person refused to date me because I was a Gemini.
Then you really dodged a bullet there.
When there were so many other compelling reasons. I was like, there's so many other reasons than this. So you're saying everything else, if I was still as messed up as I am,
that is
but born in some other,
Usually I actually tell people that I'm a different sign because I really, really like it when they go, oh, I knew the whole time that you were a Capricorn. And I'm like, haha, no, you're incorrect because I lied to you. And horoscopes are bullshit.
No, that's so
You're living a lie. I'm sorry.
That's so Gemini of you, Robin.
That is actually what they say. That is literally what they say when I do that. It's like I can't win with these people. Jesus.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Like, share, subscribe.
And happy birthday to us.
Yes.